Hey there everyone, this video is an astrological update for the month of June 2025. So we'll just jump right into it. May was a pretty intense month, and if you saw my last video about the astrology for May of 2025, the biggest transit that we dealt with was Saturn moving into Aries, which is really a brand new beginning. This is sort of a new karmic cycle that we are beginning at this point. Old patterns, old wounds, old ways of being are being removed and eliminated to make space for what is new, to make space for what is coming. And I mentioned in the video a number of things about changes in leadership and changes in the way we relate to our dreams. So if you missed last month's video, you can go back to check that out. June is a month with quite a bit of energy that is going to invite us to take a few steps forward, despite feeling maybe a little interrupted in the process. A couple of themes that I had for the month were the themes of light and dark, the themes of old and new, and the reality wake-up call is kind of what I'm calling the month of June 2025. So I mentioned Saturn moving into Aries, so new beginnings. That happened last month. We also had Pluto moving into Aquarius, and that energetic is also something that we need to be mindful of because Pluto, a generational planet, is shaking a lot of things up as it relates to humanity at large and social systems, and we've seen a lot of things play out in the news related to UFOs, climate engineering. We're actually hearing about that more. Some of you might know this as chemtrails in the sky. But in April, the UK actually announced that they were geoengineering or climate engineering in order to block out the sun, which is kind of interesting because there's a lot of clouds in the UK. I'm not sure why they need to do it there. But look up, this is happening everywhere. We also saw geopolitical changes, particularly with Trump in the Middle East. We saw the death of the Pope, and Vladimir Putin was under attack, all since Pluto has moved into Aquarius. So these two big astrological shifts we're already starting to see, and we actually have a few more this month, and then when Uranus moves into the sign of Gemini, this will be kind of the final push of all the outer planets into new signs. So we're still moving through or beginning a brand new cycle, but it's a little crunchy nonetheless. So let's jump into the details for the month of June. So first, on June 6th, Venus enters Taurus. Venus is in an exaltation in the sign of Taurus, meaning that Venus is very comfortable in Taurus. Venus is the planet of love, beauty, connection, attraction, the feminine principle, and also money, which is quite happy in the sign of Taurus. So issues of security, stability, pleasure, our relationship to nature. Also, while Venus is in Taurus for the month, she's going to want to unify people and to connect people together. We might need to take a double check at our contracts, so agreements that we made with other people, and also our finances might need a little bit of attention as well with Venus in the sign of Taurus. But ultimately, we actually could feel really great. We might be more attuned to beauty and the arts, and we might be more inclined to spend. So watch out. And for any of you who are on vacation in the month of June, just pay attention to that. On June 9th, Mercury and Jupiter are both going to enter the sign of Cancer. They're going to conjunct first in Gemini, and Mercury and Jupiter together. Mercury is the planet of communication and ideas and thinking and sharing, with Jupiter the great benefic of expansion and growth. So together, there could be big ideas that take place, or very important communications that happen probably between the 6th, 7th, 8th of June. But when the two planets move into Cancer on the 9th, this could bring an emotional roller coaster of sorts, because Cancer is a sign of emotions, is a sign of home, And so with Mercury and Jupiter together, maybe something that we learn or find out or discover could be a little bit of a roller coaster for us. Now, what's really important with this transit is that, and not to jump over this, is that Mercury is going to move through the sign pretty quickly, but Jupiter is now entering the sign of Cancer, which is the big deal for the month of June. And actually will be in Cancer until 2026, so we have about a year. Jupiter in Cancer expands the themes of home, expands the themes of nationalism, of belonging, of family matters. It expands our emotional awareness. It expands the ideas of what we need to feel safe and what we need to feel secure. The last 2 times in recent history where Jupiter moved into the sign of Cancer was July 12th, 2001. So that was right before the September 11th attacks, of course, and the themes of homeland security and how we protect ourselves in the U.S. became a very big theme. The last time Jupiter was in Cancer, the ingress was in June 25th, 2013, and around that time, Russia annexed Crimea. And so what we have seen in recent history with Jupiter moving into the sign of Cancer are themes of home and nationalism and our, not land so much because that's technically Taurus, but what we need to feel safe. These sorts of themes have played out in the past, and it certainly bodes the question of the surveillance state that we're sort of under in the world, which definitely came out since the September 11th attacks of 2001. But Jupiter is also connected to faith. So faith and our connection to spirit and knowledge. But in Cancer, more from our own emotions, from our own feelings. So we can expect an expansion of an understanding of our own feelings over the next year or so. Also, with Jupiter in Cancer, themes of siblings, themes of nationalism and nativism, as I've mentioned before, and unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever way you want to look at it, throughout history, Jupiter in the sign of Cancer is very much connected to empiricism. So getting out there in the world, in countries taking over other countries, things like that. So it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out, of course. If you're interested in knowing where Jupiter is affecting you in your life, so what area of life has the greatest potential for expansion for the next year, you can take a look at where the first degree of Cancer is in your chart. And if you don't know how to look at that, or you'd like a more in-depth reading, then you can book a reading with me, and I'd be happy to talk to you about where that is activated in your chart. Because Jupiter is really all about expansion and growth, and especially because it's moving into a new sign, moving into the sign of Cancer, we're basically getting sort of a reset in some ways in terms of the areas of life in which we can expect growth to happen. So June 9th is a pretty big day because of Jupiter's ingress into the sign of Cancer. But also, what's happening at the same time is that Mercury is squaring Saturn and Neptune. I want to talk a little bit about Saturn and Neptune. Saturn and Neptune I spoke a lot about in our last month's video. Saturn is the planet of structures and power. Neptune is all about dreams and intuition, but also the fog and things that are not particularly clear. These two planets are in the sign of Aries at the moment, so new initiations, new beginnings, but it's not clear of where the structures of the world, which ones are going to last, which new ones we're going to create. It's all feeling a bit amorphous at the moment, and unfortunately it's not going to feel clear until well after February of 2026, when those two planets come into an exact conjunction together. Before then, they're just going to kind of dance around each other. So if you missed last month's video, you can go take a look at that, where I spoke about that. But Mercury is going to square those two planets on June 9th, making it very challenging for us to understand what is actually going on. Facts will be embellished. Information can feel completely overloaded. Something that is happening, or a series of things that is happening in the world, could feel very chaotic around that time. In particular, also, I just want to, because Jupiter is going to be playing with this as well, we're going through a really interesting time where Jupiter and Saturn are concerned. Jupiter and Saturn were conjunct each other at the beginning of 2020, where we saw lockdown, where we saw the beginnings of what later became, let's put it this way, more of control over humanity, more surveillance, different things, different, let's put it this way, different medicines that were brought to the world without being tested, more of a push for global ID systems, even a conversation around CBDCs, central banking, digital currencies. These things started and really came present in 2020 when those two planets were conjunct. Now they're coming into square of one another. So it's sort of the next step. What happens next with this stuff? So it's kind of interesting to consider that, but we might start to see more of a push for either digital currencies or more centralized digital currencies. We might see a push for more control in healthcare. We'll see what's actually going to play out. What's also happening around June 9th is that Venus is squaring Pluto. So Venus is all about relationships and Pluto is all about transformation and change. So we could experience some intense things, especially intense emotions in relationships. Again, as I mentioned, information could be very unclear and pretty chaotic around the 9th of the month. So we need to kind of breathe into that and see how we go. However, that energy is deeply creative as well. So last month we talked a lot about how there's this new energy, and I invited you to consider how could we step into creating more of the world that we want. But this month we're going to have some tension, especially especially in the middle of the month. It could feel pretty intense. Around June 11th, the full moon in Sagittarius, which is inviting us to think bigger and to see things from a higher perspective, will be trining Mars in Leo and Chiron in Aries. So at this time, we may actually be able to achieve things that didn't seem possible. We might have the strength to overcome things that held us back in the past. With Chiron in the mix, there is a sense of healing. With Mars, some action that we take. So it might be a good time to take some action related to healing or related to releasing something of the past. But the full moon in Sag is going to bring us new perspectives. And of course, the planet Jupiter rules Sagittarius. And we talked about how Jupiter is kind of the big player of the month. So it could bring us some big ideas about actions that we need to take. It'll be interesting if you have been in the process, very active in your healing, you may end up taking some very new actions in your life. And if not, and you're still operating from a lot of wounding, or some old patterns are coming up for you, you might be taking action to sort of heal that around that time. On June 15th, Jupiter will square Saturn and Neptune. And as I mentioned, this is sort of bringing back the themes of the social changes that have taken place since the year 2020. Mars will square Uranus on the exact same day, so the energy of freedom and revolution, also potentially the energy of pent-up frustrations and not knowing exactly what to do. This is a time by mid-month, June 15th, where we're wanting to expand in an area of life, but we might be feeling limited by fears or some sort of restriction of some kind. But it's definitely a time for us to tap into our dreams for a better world. What do we actually want? Because those dreams are going to clash with reality, with what we're seeing in the world, which is why I'm calling the month of June 2025 a reality wake-up call. We're going to really start to see that the things that are taking place on planet Earth may not be in alignment with what we actually wish for ourselves. By June 17th, the planet Mars will move into Virgo, which is going to give us a little boost in terms of working hard. We may be really willing to put in time and effort into things that really matter to us. So, as I mentioned, the first part of the month, certainly from the 9th through the 15th, 16th, 17th, is pretty crunchy. I don't know what will play out, of course, on the world stage, but likely many things, and it might feel very chaotic. Again, we're sort of in between worlds at the moment, where we still need to see the things that are being hidden, many of which are going to come to the surface this month. And we need to see them so that we can get very clear about where it is we want to go next in our personal lives and collectively. Now on June 21st, we're going to be celebrating the Summer Solstice, where the sun moves into Cancers. This is the beginning of Cancer season. The Summer Solstice is the longest day of the year, so the most hours of sunlight for the year. And the Summer Solstice is always a time for us to take a look and maybe reflect on light and dark. Because from this point forward, the days, in the Northern Hemisphere, of course, the days are going to start to get shorter and shorter and shorter as we move toward the winter solstice. But the solstice is an energetically packed moment. It's a great time for manifestations. It's a great time for play. It's a great time for connecting with the people in your life. But the themes of light and dark are perhaps the greatest themes to pay attention to in your own life. Now, you can think of this very literally because it will be a day with a lot of light, but I think it's also a metaphor for the fact that there is so much light coming into the planet, so much light from the sun, so much information from galactic sources and otherwise that are really inviting us to wake up and to see and to engage with life, which is what the summer solstice will invite us to do. This month in the Soul Purpose Collective, this is my online group that focuses on living and leading from our soul's purpose. This month we're going to be focusing on the concept of light and dark, and really how manifestation of anything physical requires darkness. We need light, that's information, that's love, that's source, but we also need darkness, that's density, to create life in physical form. You know, in spiritual communities, it's very easy to focus on, love and light, love and light, love and light. When in reality, we also have to make peace with our darkness as well, because that's part of what makes the human experience. So in the Soul Purpose Collective this month, we're going to be focusing on that and the connection between soul and spirit. So if that's interesting to you, you can find the link to the community right below this video. We'd love to have you. But whether you join us or not, I invite you to think about the balance of light and dark in your own life, and how can you find maybe a center point. It's not always about love and light, and it's not always about fighting demons and darkness and shadow. There is a center point, and the summer solstice is a turning point where we'll find greater balance on the other side. So that's what I invite you to consider in your life. Now, around the summer solstice, which is a pretty energetically packed time, on the 22nd and 23rd, the sun will square Saturn and Neptune. We've been talking about that tension of new structures versus old visions, and what is our new vision for Earth? And then it's going to conjunct Jupiter on the 24th. So the portal around the summer solstice, let's say 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, super potent. And I mean like really intense. And at that time, you know, it is a really important time to connect with what it is our dreams are and our visions are and what we want to manifest, but understand that we're all going to be feeling a sense or desire to expand, but also likely feelings of doubt and fear and loss and potentially even frustration that the expansion isn't happening fast enough or the way we might think it should. It's a really, really potent portal around the summer solstice this year. On June 25th, we have the Cancer new moon, also conjunct Jupiter. So we have, again, the themes of Cancer and home and Jupiter expansion. This month is all about expanding of the ideas of home and how we need to care for ourselves. And there's a lot of opportunity this month to get downloads, to receive a lot of messages from our heart if we allow ourselves to connect truly with our inner world. On June 26th, we have Mercury in Leo, or rather Mercury moving into the sign of Leo. So now the ideas that maybe we've been thinking about for a lot of the month, we might end up taking action on toward the end of the month. We might have some very valuable insights. And on June 29th, we have Mercury trining Saturn and conjunct Pluto. So at the very end of the month, we have a really potent opportunity to get some valuable insights into our inner worlds and also what's being reflected in the outer. Remember that words hold tremendous power. And I believe in the month of June 2025, many of us are going to learn this. Whether you are observing it in the external or observing it within yourself, it's very likely that you're going to understand the power of words and how words can create chaos, but how they can also create awakening and enlightenment, and can shift our whole perspective. This month has a lot of explosive potential. Some of the things that might come up to be seen, especially with Venus in Taurus this month, could be financial, and not to freak anybody out, but what I would say is that it's really important to understand what it is that you value financially and where you are financially, because there's probably likely big financial issues that are likely to surface globally. Whether that happens this month or in July, in the summer months, we are moving toward a disclosure of not just political things, but economic things and financial matters that have been sort of hidden for a very long time. So, all of that to say, the month of 2026 is full of potential. It's very potent. So I invite you to take a breath, pause, understand that if around the 9th of the month and the 15th of the month and around the 21st to the 25th of the month, they're all very intense moments astrologically that can bring us the messages and the information that we really need. It was interesting, as I looked out the window here, I got my confirmation message, 2 birds flying together. So take that for what it is, but generally that's the universe affirming what I'm thinking or saying. So I hope that this message finds you well, and if you're looking for any support this month in your own spiritual path or living your purpose, then I invite you to join the Soul Purpose Collective. We would love to have you. And if you're wondering about how all of this astrology is affecting you and how you can make better decisions through what could be some pretty uncertain days, then my invitation is for you to book an astrology reading and we can take a deep dive of that together. Also, if you have any questions or thoughts or comments about this video, if you liked it, please leave them in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. And until next month, I wish you well, and I'll see you soon.